You're listening to Opera Box Score.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Wherever you are, however you're listening, it's America's talk radio show about opera. It's Opera Box Score. I'm Ashley Hardgrave, joined this week by Oliver Camacho and Matt Cummings. All right, this week, it's the first week in November in America, and the election is the only thing we can think about. We have no idea if America will still be a thing by the time you hear this, but we will try to continue the conversation about politics, I mean opera, at any rate. Then, a free throw from bass Kenneth Kellogg, who's set to make his Chicago debut in his signature role, the father in Jeanine Tesoriu's and Tazewell Thompson's Blue. Plus, in the 2-minute drill, we've got one tenor chiding us and another tenor grousing about his picture not being included on the cover of a DVD. And I'm sorry, democracy is at stake here, so forgive us if we don't really care. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast on Spotify. You're going to click follow, or on Apple Podcasts, you're going to hit the plus sign. You can also send us a voice memo or email us your hot takes. That's going to be at mailbag@operaboxscore.com, or just record your thoughts using the You Got Something to Say tab on our website, which is, guess what, operaboxscore.com. However you contribute, you're going to get an OBS beer coaster, an OBS lapel pin, and the highly requested #1 OBS fan foam finger just for sharing your own hot takes. Oliver Camacho, how you holding up?
I'm okay. It took me almost 3 hours to exercise my voting right. How to exercise my, what am I word
your
looking
civic
for?
duty.
Privilege, birthright? I don't know. It's not birthright, but
Thank
you. Know
you.
what I mean.
And I was trying to not lean. I wanted to stand up and look like, I can do this. This is a good weight, And everybody was really soldiering through. I was actually impressed. Nobody was complaining. Nobody was, acting like a jerk. Everybody's just dude, okay, so we got to do this, So go us. Even though in Chicago our vote means nothing.
It absolutely does, because we have school board and down ballot races. Don't ever forget those down ballots, America.
And all of those judges.
Matt Cummings, how was your voting experience?
My voting experience was much smoother as I just simply dropped my ballot into the drop box, and I'm very jealous of all of you in the future who already know, when you're listening to this, hopefully, what happened with the most consequential event of this week. And by that, of course, I'm referring to Patti LuPone attending the Sunset Boulevard revival.
I am going to be so glued to TikTok for all sorts of reasons, but specifically for the Patti LuPone review of Sunset. Hopefully it's anywhere near as good as Rosie O'Donnell's. I also did my civic duty today with that handy dandy mail-in ballot. I cannot recommend it enough, folks. It's such a lovely thing. But honestly, as much as we're not able to talk about anything besides, the possible continuation or, fall of democracy, we're going to talk about one more thing. We're going to talk about the Jason Kelce phone smash. We're going to talk about it and how it's an allegory for modern masculinity. I'm the person that brings the sports here. It is football season. This is football related, but it's also, cultural zeitgeist and women's progress related.
I've been seeing comments about this and have not dug into the full story, so I'm so excited to get my real primer from Ashley.
Yes,
delighted. All right, here we go. So Jason Kelce was out at a football game this weekend. It was a Penn State game, and some moron comes up to him filming him, and he asks him about his brother dating Taylor Swift, and he uses a homophobic slur to talk about Travis Kelce dating Taylor Swift. Jason does not take too kindly to this, grabs this guy's cell phone and smashes it on the ground. So, of course, the moment goes viral, but a lot of different reactions are happening. There's a section of folks who are applauding it. I would be on that side. And then there's a section of folks that are really, really upset. Now, let's talk about why they would be upset. Because they agree with the angry phone twerp. And why would they agree with that angry phone twerp? It's because they take issue with a big, burly NFL football brother and his other brother letting the women in their lives have agency and be whole people. They're threatened by it. You might have some people in your life like this or near your life that you might describe as, I don't know, MAGA males. They're mad because championing the way of treating women this way, as whole beings that have their own power to shine, that might just mean that women start expecting that of you. And frankly, Brosif, you're lucky you got out of there with just a smashed phone. Jason Kelce is not even a year out of the NFL. He is very clear that you do not mess with his family, and he is married to a woman from Belco, okay? You should be glad you can still walk. Anyway, let's talk some opera.
Chalk Talk on Opera Box Score.
We're recording, as always, on Monday of this week, and that means it's November 4th, which means tomorrow is a big day, but actually, who knows if we're going to know anything tomorrow. We might not actually know anything until you are hearing this.
Or after.
But obviously, it's hard for us to, do the normal research we would like to do for every episode because we're all just like biting our nails and drinking ourselves to sleep. And we thought, well, as long as we're thinking about politics, let's talk a little bit about politics and opera and democracy in opera per se. And I'm going to just tell a little story about a composer that nobody really thinks about that much. What's his name? Aubert. Daniel Aubert. Who's known mostly for his opera comique like Fra Diavolo and Le Domino Noir. But it is said that he wrote the first true French grand opera of the 19th century. And that opera is called La Muette de Portici and is known for its alleged role in the Belgian Revolution of 1830. So the opera does have a sort of revolutionary style plot, something about like the Neapolitans revolting against Spanish rule, and there's like a fisherman who
there's always a fisherman,
whose sister is seduced by somebody from the Spanish aristocracy, and so I'm sure there's some love story there, like love triangle, and his love sparks a revolution. And there's a duet, a very patriotic duet that happens, Amour sacré de la patrie. And apparently, this opera was once performed at the Belgian Revolution of 1830. It sparked the Belgian Revolution of 1830. There was King William I was throwing a party to celebrate 15 years of reign, and it was a 3-day affair with fireworks and feasts and processions, and the opera being performed on the last night of what would you call this? William Palooza. Yeah. The
Jubilee.
I don't remember what 15 is. The Copper Jubilee, maybe?
So when this duet starts, that has very patriotic text, it's a second act duet, Amour sacré de la patrie. One contemporary account describes what happened in the theater during the duet. When La Fouillade and Cassel began singing the celebrated duet Amour sacré de la patrie, enthusiasm exploded irresistibly, and the singers found it necessary to start afresh in the midst of the cheering. Finally, when La Fouillade launched into his entreaty, the invocation aux armes, the public could no longer be restrained. The acclaimed aria and actor, they booed the fifth act in order to stop the performance, and the delirious crowd hurled itself out of the hall into history. Welcomed by the other crowd which waited outside, it joined the demonstration which loosed the revolution of 1830. So, I'm just trying to think of what that would be like. You're in the theater, something is going on outside, you get to this point in the opera, and people start getting rowdy.
Then Les Mis happens.
Exactly.
And that's Cats.
So let's hear a little portion of that duet from Aubert's La Muette de Portici. We'll hear from we're not going to listen to the 1830 performance because unfortunately we didn't have any pirates from there. But we do have a studio recording from the Monte Carlo Opera with Alfredo Kraus and Jean-Philippe Lafont. This is from 1996.
Amour sacré de la patrie, l'amour, l'audace et la fierté. À mon pays, je dois la vie, il me devra sa liberté. Amour sacré de la patrie, l'amour, l'audace et la fierté. À mon pays, je dois la vie, il me devra
Just a little bit of La Muette de Portici. Don't you feel like going onto the streets and
barricading away?
Like more than usual, or just like okay.
So I'll stay in the same kind of avenue and talk about the person whose name comes to mind when you think about the father of grand opera, even though historically it might have actually been Daniel Aubert. And that, of course, is Giacomo Meyerbeer. And we're not going to talk about his first opera, but we're going to talk about the big hit that made him a superstar, and that is Les Huguenots. That is an aspirate H. It's not Les Huguenots, it's Les Huguenots. And this opera, like many grand operas, is sprawling, does not even begin. They famously have the backdrop of history and are about serious, important political events. And so really there's not much that doesn't happen in this opera. You've got mistaken identity, you've got religious conflict, you've got several show-stopping arias and duets, you've got the religious political turmoil, you've got multiple crowd scenes, you've got 5 acts stuffed to the gills of French opera goodness. And one of the most celebrated scenes in the whole show comes at the beginning of Act 4. It's known as The Conspiracy and the Blessing of the Daggers. And even the composition of this scene, is very political, because originally, he wanted to include a singing role for the Queen Mother at the time of the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre, who was Queen Catherine de' Medici. But the royal censors would not permit her to be portrayed in a negative light of blessing this revenge plot. So when she is still sometimes included, but now she's just a mute character. Another parallel with La Muette de Portici. And we do not have enough time to summarize the plot of the Huguenots. There's not enough time on Earth to summarize the plot of the Huguenots, but suffice it to say, tensions have been steadily rising between the Catholics and the French Protestants throughout the evening. They've tried socializing together. Queen Marguerite, whose marriage is the backdrop of this big massacre, her marriage to Henry of Navarre, tried to matchmake around it by pairing the protagonist Raoul with a Catholic noblewoman, Valentine. But there's that mistaken identity piece again. Raoul messes everything up, and it's, of course, due to a misunderstanding. It's a libretto by Scribe. What do you want from me? Act 3, though, is when it really hits the fan, because the nobles who Raoul offended by refusing Valentine's hand try to kill him. And his crusty Huguenot servant, Marcel, riles up their troops who cause a ruckus, but then here comes Joan Sutherland on a horse to break the riot up. And both sides are pledging their everlasting hatred for each other. So here we come to the Blessing of Daggers, where the nobles are going to pledge to murder the Huguenots. And the music in this scene is so gripping and ominous. The brass is really martial and intense, and there's all these shrieking woodwind sounds, and the chorus just builds and builds and builds with all these dotted rhythms that show the fervor of their conviction. Alex Ross wrote about this opera a couple years ago when it was starting to get revived, and he talks about how these serene chords that accompanied Catholic blessings earlier in the opera make an appearance here in the low register. It's very foreboding. Let's hear a little bit of this Blessing of the Daggers scene from the bonding studio set.
Alla
Wonderful, wonderful. So that scene is followed, of course, by what else but a love duet. And then in Act 5, we begin the massacre that neither Raoul nor Valentine escape. And the opera closes on the chorus of Huguenot soldiers singing, "God wants blood." So
Family show.
it's a rather ominous warning. It's pretty stark. It's pretty bleak. But, like, these are conflicts that have broken out in the past and continued to break out for centuries due to, like, religious intolerance and just just showing what can happen when these tensions fester and every attempt to de-escalate makes things worse. I'm not going to belabor this point anymore, only to say that let's hope that we do not have a Huguenots revival this week.
I think that is a perfectly wonderful thing to hope. Speaking of hope, I'm going to turn a little bit of hope and humor back into this conversation. Listeners, you can't see it, but I'm wearing a t-shirt that says "Hope is contagious," because that is the t-shirt I wear when I get COVID vaccines or vote. So I'm going to talk a little bit this week in our Politics and Opera special about Fidelio. It's not just Beethoven's only boring opera. You know he was deaf, because if he could have heard all those repeats, he would have stopped writing. I'm kidding. It is actually a pretty perfect piece to contemplate on during this time, as much as we're joking about the tension and anxiety that are absolutely real. The whole concept of this piece is just a couple of ordinary people that become heroes. Why? Because they refuse to stay silent in the face of injustice. And the center of the drama and the tip-top hero is a woman? A girl? Come on. This is, and of course this is fresh to me because I just came back from seeing the opening night at Washington National. Once again, thank you to David Shea and his lovely people over there. This, for me, is that ultimate example of the phrase, "let the women do the work." So here's Fidelio in an Ashley Fide nutshell. Florestan finds out that nobleman Pizarro has done some shady business, and he decides to let the people know. Pizarro then decides to get revenge by kidnapping Florestan and taking him into the prison that he runs, while also spreading rumors about his death. Now, Florestan's wife, Leonora, she does not believe the hype, and she decides to take matters into her own hands. So she goes and dresses as a male named Fidelio. She infiltrates the prison as an employee in an attempt to jailbreak her man. Her boss's daughter also ends up taking a shining to Fidelio, and he's such a good employee that the dad is cool with it, but we can discuss that at another time. Both the husband and the wife in this risk their lives to right the wrongs of an immoral system, and how modern and weirdly now is that? Beethoven is writing this piece. What's so cool is in the Enlightenment of the 19th century. So he's all, like everybody else, caught up in this optimism in Europe that democracy is going to bring together these principles of equal rights, equal opportunities, and the like. Several pieces from this era had these like patriotic and political themes around unjust imprisonment, heroic rescue, good conquering over evil, love conquering all. And as I've mentioned, I saw that opening night of Washington National Opera, the production from Zambello and Spano, and friend of the show, Sinead Campbell-Wallace. Wallace and Jemez McCorkle as the lovers, they are, in this production, they're straight up stars. Full stop. Sinead deserves a year of vacation just for singing the whole piece. And McCorkle, he gave me this entire story arc and narrative in that first high G of the Act 2 opening aria. He went from tiny, delicate head to full screaming wail and then back again with like the most perfect elasticity. He told the entire story in that opening note while, being chained at the wrists and face down on the floor. It was otherworldly. And if I have a pro tip for you, America and listeners, watch for Jemez McCorkle. He is going to be doing things in the future, and you're going to want to be a part of it. So to see this piece in the nation's capital in the fall of an election year, that's one thing. But then Zambello, she goes and crossover casts the prime minister, the one that shows up at the end of the piece and announces that tyranny's ended and frees the prisoners and, heals the country. She cast the prime minister as DC native and superstar Denyce Graves. Okay, so At the end of an opera that's all about standing up for what's right, you bring out a leader that comes to say it's all going to be okay, and it's a 60-year-old black woman looking like $1 million in a white pantsuit. Are you freaking kidding me? So I found myself crying, and I was a little bit embarrassed, and then I started hearing sniffles from the people down the row, and then I was like, oh my, every one of us is sniffling. So there was just an impact from Zambella knew exactly what she was doing with that, and with the sort of stark World War II-esque European bleakness in the set and the costumes and the really bleak staging, to have this like glamour moment of the leader coming out was really, it wasn't even double meaning. It was like quadruple meaning. It was really, really something. So Fidelio, even 3,000 repeats later, is this story that feels weirdly and unfortunately fresh. We see this detention of prisoners of conscience everywhere, all over the world. And so many of us, myself included, always get baffled and furious as to the why when we're seeing these, of course, in real life. And then we're paralyzed by what to do about it. And so when I think about the actual intentions and actions of the two freedom fighters in this piece, if any of us can be a percentage as brave as Florestan and Leonora when we witness injustice, I think we can be on the right path, and let's hope other people feel the same. And so very quickly, we're going to hear a little snippet of Sinead at Washington National doing the beautiful grand aria Abscheuliche, not the hateful monster part, but the faithfulness and love will prevail part.
American-based Kenneth Kellogg created the role of the father in the world premiere of Jeanine Tesoriu and Tazewell Thompson's Blue in 2019 at the Glimmerglass Festival. And since then, he has reprised the role in all but one of the opera's revivals. He'll be making his debut at Lyric Opera of Chicago, singing the father just next week. Kenneth, welcome to Opera Box Score.
Thank you. My pleasure.
So we're looking right now at the liner notes for the commercial recording of Washington National Opera's production of Blue, which is mostly the original cast with you and Brianna as the father and the mother. And you just told me that the art that they used on the cover is your actual son.
Yeah, it is.
He looks like he was, 4 weeks old when they took it?
He was a newborn. That's from his newborn photo shoot.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So tiny.
Yeah, it's really tiny. And those are my hands. That's probably this watch. But yeah, when Tazewell and Francesca were looking for photos, or looking for art that would speak to the heart of this piece, I sent them a few photos from my newborn photo shoot, and this was the one they chose, and I think it's very fitting.
Yeah, you're holding his head just like in the aria. Oh my God, I'm gonna cry.
Yeah. And my son was in the premiere in Glimmerglass.
Oh wow,
he was 4 or 5 by then. That was an experience that, while exciting,
but
he
ran across the stage.
He ran across the stage. He played my son in the show.
Because there's like a little instrumental interlude where he grows up.
Yeah. It's to signify that transition of time, because we go abruptly from the hospital scene to the father-son scene, and we found in rehearsals that there was no transition in time. Yeah. So Tazewell had the brilliant idea of showing the child at a younger age in that interlude, and then transitioning into the father-son scene.
Francesca was at Glimmerglass at this time, right?
Absolutely,
okay.
Yeah.
So we spoke to Francesca last year when she was directing The Nose here in Chicago. And she said something that I didn't even think to ask her about, because I was talking to her about how she wants to make her opera companies hospitable for parents.
Oh, absolutely.
And in addition to actually like helping parents find activities for their kids, actually using kids on stage. Is this part of that, you think?
I don't know, but I think it's definitely helpful. I mean, being a parent in this industry, I mean, it's a little different for me as a father because I have a little bit more leeway when it comes to childcare. My wife is amazing. But I've seen my colleagues, my female colleagues who have kids, and it is a challenge to find sitters on a show night or not be able to go to a party because they have to go back and relieve the babysitter. It's something in this business that I don't think we consider all the time. And, women are often told, you have to either have a family or have a career. And I think that while the conversation isn't being had as much today, it's very much been a part of how we are trained as singers.
How many great voices did we lose to inhospitable opera companies?
How many great voices are we losing?
Yeah.
Still losing to that inhospitability. But yeah, it's something that needs to be addressed. And I think Francesca is right in that we need to make it more accommodating. We need to accommodate more the realities of singers' lives.
If we want them to be complete artists and have interesting things to do on stage, they actually need to have lives outside.
Absolutely. And it makes a difference because I've done the show with a few different mothers. I'm a few different women playing the mother now. And you can tell the difference in between a singer who has a son or who is a parent and one who isn't. What they bring to the role is very different based on their lived experience.
This opera is really tough. And right before we started recording, you were telling the story about Jeanine Tesoriu consulting you about what is the style guide for Kenneth Kellogg?
the style guide. Yeah, it's interesting. Her being a musical theater composer, a lot in rehearsal she talked about, I don't want this sung. I don't want the singing to be the most important thing. The words are powerful. Tazewell has done a beautiful job with libretto. And every time I read it, every time I encounter this score, it's like the libretto alone can stand as a beautiful piece of work. But
to read it as a play.
To read it as a play. But Jeanine has done a beautiful job of stepping out of the way and letting the words, soar in this score.
It occurred to me as we were interviewing each other, as I was interviewing you on WFMT, that the way it's constructed feels a lot like early opera like Monteverdi, where there's so much text you got to get through, and you have to just like get it out almost in recitation tones. But there are just these moments where like deserve an arioso, so you stop the recitation and sing for like 2 minutes of arioso.
Yeah. So we were talking in rehearsal the other day. So I've done it. This is my 9th time doing it now, so it's kind of old hat for me. So it's very much in my body. But some of the singers who are new. One of the singers said it reminds them of Bohème, where it just goes and there's an aria, there's recit. There's no set pieces in like Mozart per se. Yeah. But the expression just pours naturally out of the music and out of what's happening in the drama.
With somebody that has the voice of your size, I mean, you have a clearly almost heroic sound to your voice. Do you find it hard to get through a lot of the chattier bits and then to hook into your bel canto tone for arioso moments?
No. I mean, I think the beauty of that is Jeanine really wrote for my voice. And we have to do patter stuff. It's no different than Mozart. It's no different than singing Leporello or Don Alfonso. I mean, you have that chattiness in traditional repertoire. Funny note that Jeanine said, can I have to write this so that other people can sing it as well? And in talking with my colleagues who looked at the score, who've considered doing the role, it presents a challenge because it goes, to the top of the register and to the very bottom of the register.
You're singing like low Fs or like...
Oh, yeah, there's like a low E, like a low E flat, and then there's like an F. So it literally goes from the top to the bottom. So it's difficult for, typical baritone, and they don't have the bottom. And it's difficult for bass because they don't typically have the top. So it's a slight badge of honor. Slight badge of honor to hold that edge, but I think it's an expressive piece that if you can get it done, you'd be rewarded for it.
I just thought of the term, which, God, it sounds so racist now, but Schwarzboss, you know. Where did that come from?
I have no idea. I want to say it's a color use of the color and not the description, physical description.
But I also think that you need to be more of like a bass baritone to sing this role, because you're a young man. You're not like meant to sound like a wise old, Zoroaster or something like that, you know?
I mean, the beauty of this, and I think it's different in traditional repertoire where sound is so important and the quality of the sound is so important, is that Jeanine comes from that musical theater world where the voice is important, but it's more so the expression of what you're saying. So whereas in Mozart or Verdi, like I wouldn't compromise color, I wouldn't compromise technique to make an effect of a sound, because you want that pure bel canto sound. But with modern works and specifically for me with this piece, I find my ability to explore colors. Just the palette is richer than traditional repertoire, and there is that innate knowing. Doing a piece like this, all the undertones of the words, all the layers and the subtext of the text. So to dig into those colors and those expressions with the voice, I think it lends well.
Isn't it great that you are experiencing this role and have become like the interpreter of this role, and now people will come to you, and when you're older, and will want to coach it with you, and
oh yeah, absolutely. But I think yes, I mean it's a badge of honor. I have my recordings of when I have to learn a role, I go and listen to very specific people.
Who?
Sam Raimi, of course.
Okay.
if
have you done Olin Blitz yet?
Not yet, but I've listened to him. I mean, I do the arias, of course, but I haven't done the role yet.
You got to sing high in the.
Yeah, you get to sing high and low. But for me, that's the beauty of the voice. I try not to stick so much in a box that I am unwilling to try something. Mm-hmm. I just did Malcolm X at Seattle Opera, which is it's a baritone role.
Yeah.
But I wanted to do that role so bad. I don't care what I have to do. If I have a year, I will go and work with my teacher and figure it out, because I believe in the drama. I believe in the piece, and I want to I want to be the artist that tells that story, not necessarily the singer that tells this story. So when I got the role to do Malcolm X, it's like, Jane, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but we are going to do
Jane
this.
is your teacher?
Yeah, Jane is my teacher, Jane Randolph in California. And we strategically worked until that role was in my body. And it was a huge success in Seattle.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question, and I don't know quite how to ask it, so please forgive me.
Of course.
And I'll try to land the plane on this one. But you're singing The Father in Blue a lot, and you just let me know that you already sung Malcolm X.
Yeah.
Are you worried about being a singer who is now identified only with this DEI movement in opera, and maybe not getting enough core repertoire on your resume?
Yeah. I used to worry about that. I used to worry about being pigeonholed and stuck in a certain repertoire. But it's happening. It's happening. We have singers who only hire to do certain things. I haven't done Porgy and Bess because it's been that thing of, if you do Porgy and Bess, you will get stuck singing Porgy and Bess for the rest of your career. So I haven't done it for that reason. And I'm doing my first one coming up next year. I'm singing Crown. But I think I'm at that point in my career where I've done enough. I'm comfortable enough in myself that I can do both. I've proven myself in the traditional repertoire, and I'm proving myself in, modern repertoire. So I don't put myself in that box, which I think is a difference.
Are you looking forward to singing just an Italian phrase that has open vowels so that you can just?
I sing every day. Okay. I sing in my studio every day, so I get my fill in that. The market's very different. The market and who's hired to do what and who's doing what is very different than what fills my soul. I sing as a business on some level. And if I'm hired to sing Blue, if I'm hired to sing Malcolm X, then that's the business side of what I do. But I am a singer. And, going back to seeing traditional repertoire in my studio and working on it with my teacher fills my soul enough to know that I can do that. And I can do it on a stage, or I can do it in a studio, I can do it on recital. It doesn't bother me that we are in this moment of modern repertoire. We're in this moment of Black stories being told. And I want to tackle those stories with the dignity and respect that I feel like they deserve, that another artist may not bring that to the role.
We're out of time, but I just want to ask, do you have a passion repertoire, be it song or a concert piece or a role that you just can't wait to sing?
So right now, I'm passionately working on a project. I'm dying to do Bluebeard's Castle.
Oh, wow. Okay. You have a Hungarian coach?
I do.
Okay.
I do. So Bluebeard's Castle is on my list, and the music for sure, but the interpretation of what that story means, and how I see it can speak to society and culture and issues going on now. That's largely where my mind is and my thinking is when it comes to art.
If you could coach it with somebody that is singing the role or has sung the role that are alive?
So the plan is to do it in English. So okay. I've done it once in Hungarian, which is why I'm so attached to it. But the plan is to do it in English so that it's accessible, and we can, have some meaningful conversations with communities and societies and audiences about the piece, so that language doesn't become a barrier.
Hello, my son. It's your daddy. He hears me. He's laughing. Look, he's taking hold of my finger. Hello, my son, my baby boy. You are my son. You make me cry. Didn't want to have you. Now for you I'd die.
One of the Act 1 arias from Blue, sung by Kenneth Kellogg from the Washington National Opera recording conducted by Roderick Cox. Blue opens at Lyric Opera Chicago November 16th and runs through December 1st. Thanks to the PR team at Lyric Opera Chicago for giving me access to Kenneth Kellogg.
One more time, just want to remind you of a fantastic opportunity that you have to send us a voice memo or email us your hot takes. This is where you get your voice heard, rest of America. That's going to be at mailbag@operaboxscore.com, or you can just record your thoughts using the You Got Something to Say tab on our website, operaboxscore.com. We've got something to say in the 2-minute drill, which is next.
This just in. The 2-minute drill.
All right, listen up. Here's everything you need to know about what happened in Operaland this week.
Stanislas de Barberjac is lashing out at Palazzetto Bruzzane, saying he can no longer, quote, stand this environmental disrespect for the singers in response to the label's DVD release of Carmen. The packaging includes a picture of tenor Thomas Atkins from an earlier performance before Barberjac took over the role of Don José. How can you not see that it is not me on the picture?
You tell him, Stan. In an interview with the Swiss outlet Blick, Jonas Kaufmann took a strong stance against OBS, saying Netrebko cancellation is short-sighted. Quote, she is undisputedly one of the most talented artists we have, and it is simply too short-sighted if we allow such artists to disappear from our schedules. You can't freeze yourself and unfreeze yourself in 20 years to continue your career. Jonas, mein Schatz, my beautiful tropical fish, have you heard anything I've said on this show?
Speaking of strong stances, Angela Gheorghiu is doubling down on her anti-encore position. I have been singing in Korea for 24 years now. In 34 years of career, together with all my colleagues, I had a principle, a backbone, and a respect for opera. The opera performance must have fluency. In the theater, an actor does not repeat a monologue in a performance because it immediately spoils the flow of the story. For me, the most important thing in opera is the story. Opera is a stage play and should not be interrupted. In Korea, I was asked by the conductor before the second act if I would like to encore my aria Visidarte, and the answer was categorically no. I, too, had huge applause at Visidarte, but I respected the artistic principle to the end.
Mezzo-soprano Wendy White, who was injured on stage at the Met after a platform collapsed, has settled her lawsuit against the company after over a decade. The confidential settlement brings one of the longest-running disputes in the Met's history to a close.
The first Latin American Contemporary Opera Congress took place in Chile last month. Organized by composers Miguel Farias and Cristian Fernandez de Toro, it featured discussions on music, aesthetics, and identity issues as a part of the larger artistic and economic factors of creating opera in Latin America.
Paris National Opera will begin an exhibit at the Palais Garnier later this month, showcasing its gems and jewelry from the 19th century through the present day. With the three of us in Weston on board, we only need 7 more people to execute this heist. Complete your application at operaboxscore.com.
Some major awards news. Yannick Nézet-Séguin received the Laurent McCutcheon Award from the Fondation Emergence, given each year to a person who has contributed to the advancement of LGBTQ+ rights. Baritone Leander Carlier won the 3rd season of Aria, a Dutch opera talent show, taking the top spot with a performance of, what else but Pierrot's Tanzlied. American tenor René Barbera has been awarded the title of Chevalier de l'Ordre des Arts et des Lettres by the French Minister of Culture.
In trade news, Pierre Vallet has been appointed music director of the Denyce Graves Foundation. DGF's mission to make classical music more inclusive will ensure the vitality of this art form for generations to come. I am honored to join Denyce and be a part of this vision, said Vallet.
And on this day, November 4th, in 1655, it was the first performance of Antonio Cesti's Largia in Innsbruck. More first performances include in 1707 Antonio Bononcini's La Conquista dell'Espagna di Scipione Africano il Giovane in Vienna. In 1729, Johann Adolf Haase's Tigrane in Naples. In 1737, it was the opening of the Teatro San Carlo in Naples. In 1752, Gluck's La Clemenza di Tito opened in Naples. In 1761, the first performance of J.C. Bach's Catone and Utica, also in Naples. I'm going to stop right here because we use this platform or this calendar called Classical Almanac. And according to Classical Almanac, there were no less than 11 first performances of operas by Jomelli, no less than 5 by Holzbauer, and no less than 3 by J.C. Bach, and 2 by Paisiello, and most of them happened in Naples at the Teatro San Carlo. I don't understand what's happening with Classical Almanac. That can't all be true, but at any rate, we're reporting on it. In 1777 was the first performance of André Gretry's Matroco in Paris. In 1863, Berlioz's Les Troyens in Paris. In 1890, the first performance of Alexander Borodin's Prince Igor in St. Petersburg. And in 1904, Francesco Alfano, is that his name? Alfano's Resurrezione in Turin. Other dates include the opening of the Brooklyn Academy of Music in New York City in 1908, the first performance of Richard Strauss's Intermezzo in Dresden in 1924. In 1961, Phyllis Curtin made her Met debut singing Fiordiligi in Così fan tutte. Here are the birthdays. In 1889, American tenor Charles Hackett. Happy birthday to English soprano Joan Rogers, born in 1956. And happy birthday to Uzbekistan composer Elena Katz-Chernin, born this day, November 4th, in 1957.
And that's your 2-minute drill.
Thank you.
That was the birthday girl, Joan Rogers, performing a little bit of Tatiana's letter scene from Eugene Onegin with Hall of Famer Sir Andrew Davis and the BBC Orchestra at Last Night in the Proms from 1988. I mostly know her from the recording of Turner the Screw with Ian Bostridge, where she is very good as the governess, but a lovely English soprano.
She's also the Susanna in the Barenboim set of Marriage of Figaro with Bartoli as Cherubino and Leila Kuberli as Contessa. I like that recording. I realize now that Barenboim conducts everything slow, so it's almost like a 4-disc set. But it's still...
It's like the Klemperer Marriage of Figaro, but in the 90s.
So we had to, believe it or not, we had to trim Angela Georgiou's statement. Matt, do you want to revisit anything that we cut out?
That was cut. I mean, well, all we cut from that, diatribe was a list of all the conductors who, allegedly, according to Angela, didn't even allow applause during operas because that interrupted the drama. Okay, that sounds real and not like something that you made up. But really what kills me about this interview is that she is very clearly still smarting over the controversy 8 years ago, when she had egg on her face because she went back to her dressing room while Jonas Kaufmann took an encore of E Lucevano le Stelle in Vienna doing Tosca, and she missed her entrance. She is still taking shots at him and claiming that she's the reason why he has a career, and making it seem like he is famously of the two the unprofessional one.
I just feel like this is going to follow her to the end of her days, and I feel like we're going to get this like Sunset Boulevard moment where she's like in a grand mansion in like a shawl, and she's still like muttering the words Jonas and entrance like over and over and over again.
That'll be
that's
what gets
future.
her to do Salome. What a woman, what a part.
So speaking of Jonas Kaufmann, I don't know why he had to speak on her behalf. I guess it's like a noble thing to do if like he really believes that she's been wronged.
You mean on Anna's behalf?
Yeah. You already made that Christmas album. It's like, what else do you need to do to like sully your, for the most part, pretty incredible career? We like you. I still like you, but just,
I mean, again, for me, I am all about people having opinions and civic minds and all that in Weston. If we have to bleep that's totally fine with me. There's having opinions about your country and civics within your country, and then there's being a total about it. And I think it's the latter that keeps getting our friend Anna in trouble. I think if there was any bit of like demurity or I don't know, emotional or intellectual intelligence about what she was saying, I think maybe it would be perceived a little bit differently. But because she has been get ready with the bleeper Weston about so many other things, I think this just doesn't do her any favors. So Jonas, I get what you're saying, but I also have ears and eyes and emotional intelligence to see that she has a history of behaving in a mildly uncouth way.
And like we have other people in our lives right now that refuse to apologize and just really, even when it's clear that they're wrong, just will not admit it,
It's one thing to double down about an encore, and it's an entirely different thing to double down about an invasion of another sovereign nation.
Well, and unfortunately that has become, for I don't know, the last 8 to 12 years, part of the MO, along with the cruelty's the point, is that admitting any sort of wrongness or incorrect behavior is seen as this like point of weakness as opposed to like a point of growth and humanity. And, we see it in our country, we see it in other countries, but those people that are absolutely unwilling to admit that they've done anything wrong, that double and triple and quadruple down on what is easily perceived by anybody with an ounce of humanity as bad behavior it's a real bummer, but it's kind of been the norm. We've introduced it into into the ether, and I don't think there's any way to put that toothpaste back in the tube.
It's totally the PR strategy now. It's just like lay low and wait for it to blow over and then make your return. It's not a comeback, it's a return.
I don't think that Stanislas de Barbariac is doing himself any favor by lashing out against Palazzetto Bruzzane. Palazzetto Bruzzane is, I think, single-handedly recording every single French opera ever written. And yeah, they produce so much, and they're real scholars that, musicologists that are working to produce and record some of this forgotten romantic French repertoire. And this is like their big, obviously Carmen is very important in terms of French opera history. So they're giving special attention to this, this recording, these performances out of all the other 100 things that they're doing. And I just feel like he's trying to get publicity for himself. And like, yes, it's insulting to not have your picture on the cover and have another tenor be on there, but you're still in the recording. Who is actually buying DVDs that's going to notice this and is going to, care really? So, yeah, it's a little too bad because, Paoletto Bruzzani made a mistake. They should apologize. And if they print it again, they should change that. But I don't see the reason of going after Bruzzani for this and trying to embarrass them.
No, it's petty.
No.
I don't think Paoletto Bruzzani is going to apologize. You know who else isn't going to apologize? The Met publicly, because they finally settled their lawsuit with Wendy White for an undisclosed. Was it Wendy White? Did I?
Yeah, it is Wendy White. Yeah.
Yes, I wanted to make sure. I was on an alliteration kick. But yes, they have settled this lawsuit finally for some undisclosed agreement and undisclosed amount. We have learned recently that, the whole crux of this case, she suffered this debilitating, muscle and nerve damage from this incident. And so where this legal case actually hinges, where this lawsuit hinged, was whether or not her injuries were going to be covered by workman's compensation. So what that means, again, as chief legal correspondent for operaboxscore, not a lawyer, but work with a lot of them. So if she is deemed an employee of the Metropolitan Opera, she is not allowed to sue. If she is seen as an independent contractor and not an employee, she can sue the Met. And so the Met's lost this argument a couple of different times, once in 2015 and again in 2017. They were arguing that she was a, quote, special employee, emphasis on the word employee as opposed to an independent contractor. What's not up for dispute is she did have kind of debilitating, possibly career-ending injuries from this incident that happened.
That they conceded liability of. The question at hand was about the damages and whether or not she would had standing. And ultimately, the New York legislature passed a law declaring that she was not an employee of the Met and could sue the company.
Exactly. And so she did. And now we have this settlement here. Oliver, any thoughts from you on?
No, but I mean, we buried the lead on this one. It was in Faust.
It did happen in Faust. And honestly, I think it was the production of Faust that was originally supposed to star Angela Georgiou. So it all comes back. I think it was the one that she backed out of with Kaufman.
Oh my gosh.
Whose career she has done so much to support over the years, and he is not grateful.
Come on, Joe. Let's wrap this show up.
Good call. Bad call. On Opera Box Score.
You know, it also come full circle. Our good call, bad call, which is how we end the show every week. Oliver, what's your good call or bad call this week?
I started season 2 of The Diplomat because I'm a big Kerry Russell stan. And I got to episode 2, and it starts with Henry Purcell's Hear My Prayer. And that just made my little gay heart so happy. And a big scene of this episode takes place at St. Paul's Cathedral, and it's just so gorgeous to think that, I don't know, that churches like that exist that can, seat 2,000 people and important, whatever British events happen there. And I would love to hear Purcell being sung at St. Paul's Cathedral. So I got a little bit of that fantasy by watching The Diplomat season 2 on Netflix. Ka-chung!
Oh, we love gay happy hearts. Way to go. Matt Cummings, what's your call this week?
A little bit of sadness to temper the happiness of Oliver's gay heart, but just to call out an RIP to the great late Quincy Jones, who passed on today, whose passing was announced on the day of our recording. Of course, famous for producing Thriller, among a million other things. Much like the plot of The Huguenots, there's not enough time to talk about all of the things that Quincy Jones did throughout his
70 years of coolness. 70.
Multiple glass ceilings just absolutely shattered. But I think that probably the prize that he would hold dearest in his heart is knowing that he is my favorite student of Nadia Boulanger. And I do mean that with offense to Aaron Copland.
Oh, sick burn. That applies to just a handful of people in our audience. My call this week, America, is just a call. This is election week. Tomorrow is election day when we're recording this on a Monday evening. You will hear this 2 days after election day. If you're an American or if you know an American, you know it's going to be a long week. My only request is that you be kind. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Know that there's a good chance that we're not going to know this whole story by the time this drops. In the words of Aaron Burr in Hamilton, I'm willing to wait for it, and I hope you are too. That is it for this week's edition of America's Talk Radio Show about opera. Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Get your voice heard and find links to stuff we've talked about at our website. Guess what? I'm going to say it again. operaboxscore.com. That is also where you can put your money where our mouths are. Give back to OBS using the Support the Team tab. Your announcer is Norm Waddell. Your creative consultant is Oliver Camacho, and your audio editor is Weston Williams. The executive producer of OBS is George Cedarquist. For co-host Matt Cummings and our guest Kenneth Kellogg, I'm Ashley Hargrave, asking you to continue the conversation about opera as you stress drink while watching the Pennsylvania Returns. Or is that just me? We're back with an all-new show next week when we celebrate Agnes Balza's 80th birthday by inducting her into the OBS Hall of Fame. Plus, you'll get more opera headlines, more hot takes, and more Steve Kornacki's khakis. Join us.